Hello and welcome to today's FP webinar on Managed SharePoint on AWS. I'm Bill Newton, one of the marketing associates here at Fpweb.net, and I'm joined by our Director of Customer Experience, Joe Bohack.
Hello, everybody.
Thanks for joining us, Joe. You are going to walk us through some of the advantages of Managed SharePoint on AWS. Before we get started, though, I wanted to remind everyone to submit questions at any time, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end, but go ahead and get those queued up for us so that we can jump right into them at the end of Joe's presentation. Also wanted to remind you that we will be giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to one lucky participant who is with us at the end of the webinar. So let's dive right in. Joe, could you tell us a little bit more about what makes an operation more efficient when you're talking about SharePoint on AWS?
Sure. Hello, everybody. So when we talk about hosting SharePoint or having it on-prem or any of those type of things, AWS does come to mind, right? Going to Amazon Web Services and actually having your entire farm there. The things that go into that are the ease of use. If you've been on it before, you know that it's very versatile as far as the cloud hosting goes for the servers. So you can actually put SharePoint on it. You can do all kinds of great stuff using those cloud-based servers. Also, the big thing there is the price. It comes in at a reasonable price. So those are wonderful wonderful things when you're looking to do budgets and whatnot. So let's move on. When we talk about those budgets, let's talk about what offloading your infrastructure looks like. So, a capital expense is having your switches, your routers, your firewalls, all running, your host servers, SAN devices, all of these things you're actually running in-house. It gets quite expensive to keep that hardware up, keep it up to date, and to keep moving with new hardware as you need over the years. And if you go into a cloud-based idea and actually utilize the infrastructure that's already there, it takes that capital expense and turns it into an operational expense. Now you've got a pretty good cost savings going on right there, and you can reinvest that. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but that money becomes an operational expense, and that's where places like AWS come to mind for sure.
Absolutely. So is that the kind of thing where if you invested into a brand new hardware, brand new equipment, you put it in your closet right there, is that something that appreciates over time?
Unfortunately, it does not appreciate. It depreciates. So you end up with just as we know with vehicles, right? The technology that goes into a vehicle depreciates too. So it's the vehicle that's going to hold your data, and the hardware, as we know, is ever evolving. So you're going to have your focus on what you need to replace and buy, and warranties, and all these expenses that when you go to the cloud, you're not actually burdened by that.
Because the cloud provider's taking on those.
They're holding on to it. Yeah, that's that infrastructure. So that's a wonderful thing.
Okay. So when you talk about offloading those costs, so now you've found an easier place, a faster place, and a cheaper place to spin up that SharePoint site. But one of the things that may be lacking in a public cloud such as AWS would be the support. So how would you go about streamlining that application of SharePoint, for example?
Well, we know there's places that you can actually go to where you can actually move to the cloud. Now what are you going to do? You can reinvest some of those savings into an MSP or managed service provider, and those people can actually take on that role. They can take on multiple roles. And right here on the screen you can see we have 3 up here: SharePoint admin, SQL support, and SharePoint dev support. So just to break those out and talk about those, a managed service provider is going to be able to give you just right off the bat with the 24/7 SharePoint admin support. Just to speak to that one alone, what would that give you? So you have And this is just a little bit of what you can get from these type of providers. So help desk, obviously, someone that's there that's going to help you 24/7 with issues that you're seeing, and make sure you're actually moving forward, and you're not actually having to work on things. As we say here a little bit further down, it says break fix. You as an owner of the SharePoint really don't want to have to spend that time break fix working on things that's going to hinder you from innovating and moving your company forward. So the help desk really kind of comes in really key there. Also, just tutorials, things like that, knowing that there's a knowledge base out there with these managed service providers, that if you do want to look into something or investigate something, that you can actually see they have a wealth of knowledge there provided for you. Also, a big thing with AWS and a lot of these cloud providers is that when you do patching for your servers, it's actually left to the owner of the server to discern whether or not they want those patches. They don't force them to you, so that becomes a good thing and a bad thing, right? So if I want to keep my current patch level the way it is, I can, but I'm also, and we'll talk about it later, increasing my risk, right?
Okay.
For security. So there's a reason why you should be doing those patches, and actually getting those done, and that's where an MSP can actually manage that for you and actually take care of those things. And we'll talk about this in a lot more detail later. But backups, backup and restore, what do we mean by that? We mean your data. The most integral part of everything that's being computed is the data. So the network, the hardware, the storefront, everything doesn't mean anything if you can't find your data. That's kind of the core of everything, right?
So the reason why, yeah.
That's why we're here, is to be, is that data. So we'll talk more about what MSPs can do for that. And then also training. I know here at Fpweb we have the training capabilities to show you how to use things and better.
And you're talking about the end users, or you're talking about the admins?
The admin, actually, on the admin level. So, and you can get as far down in there as you want, really, as far as looking at end user training too. And then also migrations and upgrades. Anybody that's dealing with SharePoint specifically knows that every few years a new version comes out, right? And we find ourselves on 2 versions before what the latest and greatest is. So you want to start saying to yourself, well, how do I get to the best and latest and greatest? Well, you got to migrate your data and everything that is you to the newest versions of SharePoint. So that that in and of itself is a daunting task in a project. It can get kind of cumbersome, especially if you have a large farm and a lot of moving parts there. So, and there's different ways to do that. I know here at Fpweb we've done quite a few of those, so I'm sure that'll come up here in a few minutes. But those are the things that in architecture here, just knowing what your architecture is and keeping up on it. Obviously, the infrastructure architecture is riding along for you, but just knowing how you have your SharePoint architecture is a big thing, and maintaining that. And then the last word there is almost a bad word, projects, because that's there's never one project going. There's always 5 or 10 or 15. So knowing that you have some admin support, some SharePoint admin support coming in from the outside to your environment is really key, and can take some of those rocks out of your backpack and let you move forward. So that's just the SharePoint admin support right there. So
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's a lot of help that I'm sure any SharePoint admin that's listening right now is thinking that would be great if I could have that taken off my plate. So you consider, what else would be helpful, I think. So now we go to SQL support. So tell us a little bit about, what that level.
Yeah, so even in here, so now we're talking the actual data itself and actually taking care of it. And so, having a DBA level expert at your fingertips, just a call or a click away is pretty good to know. So, performance tuning of your SQL databases, making sure that you have You're not letting them outgrow themselves, or you end up with one giant database or anything like that. Just adminning your databases and making sure that they stay healthy. And then also, migrations and upgrades like we talked about before. Sometimes you got to move things around, and knowing that you have somebody that's studied at this is a pretty good thing to know. MSPs also monitor those health of SQL, so that's a good thing to know too. So I know for us, we're watching over that, making sure you're not running out of space or different things that could go wrong that would actually hinder you from actually being able to innovate and move forward with your end users and your customers. And just having that high availability, because you know that you can actually run clustering, replication, and all that kind of stuff, as they say, right? So, using all of these tools that your SQL support can actually help you with, and you don't have to worrying about it, right? So that's a great thing to know, that you have SQL support, just like I said, a click away.
That's a great call, and that goes beyond SharePoint too, right? I mean, we're talking about everything that runs on top of a SQL server. So
correct.
You could that goes even beyond. What I'm trying to say is that you can get a SQL server on AWS, and once again, you're looking at this ability to get managed support. And here we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so maybe turning back toward SharePoint specifically, you start talking about the dev end of that support work, right?
Right, exactly. So having a SharePoint dev team, again, at your fingertips is wonderful. To work on custom web parts, third-party web parts that you want to get installed for different reasons. Excuse me. Custom code being written is straight into, say PowerShell or whatnot, to actually make your server and SharePoint site do exactly what you want it to do. Branding of your site, in consulting, working on authentication with your end users, working to customize that authentication so you feel a little more secure. An Active Directory federation, services, governance, encryption, everything that it says up here. Those things you can get from development teams, which is a wonderful thing. So, I don't know how you could go wrong. That's
a good point.
It's something that, again, is just a click away.
That seems like that would definitely free up a team to really enjoy the capabilities of having SharePoint on AWS. Let's move in toward more of backup and disaster recovery.
Right, the data.
We're talking about protecting your data. Tell us a little bit more about what goes into that and what we should be looking for.
Well, great. So one of the things we talked about before was the data. Data is the core of everything. So we was doing some research, and we found this pie chart, and it's very interesting to look at this and see that we talk about the 5 cases of actually natural disaster. We call it disaster recovery for a reason, right? But I think a lot of people in our minds, when I think of disaster recovery, I see a tornado across the Great Plains. But what I don't realize is disaster recovery is really covering, here we see studies show us that 44% of disasters are actually hardware malfunctions or failures. So a host dies, or something goes wrong with inside the the backbone or the infrastructure. So that gets pretty interesting, right? And then 32%, I hate to tell everybody, it's us. It's human intervention. The more we automate, the better off we are. But that's okay. We got to be here, right? So, and then 14%, we're looking at software corruption. Something just went wrong somewhere around, say on the application layer. Maybe even in the OS, you could have some problems. We're going to need to actually do a restore of say that BHD or the file system, or get you back to your SQL data even. So anyway, and then 7%, and this number is scary to me that it's so high. 7% is viruses and malware attacks. That gets interesting because that I think we just did a webinar on cybersecurity.
Yes, we did. Yep.
With Dan Pinkley. That was a pretty phenomenal actual webinar. I like that one. You can actually find that on our YouTube channel, right?
That is correct. Along with the rest of all of our FPWebs are archived both on our YouTube channel and at Fpweb.net/webinars.
Oh, great.
And so the last one we did at the end of September 30th, I believe, we really got into not only the increasing complexity and an increasing number of malware and virus attacks, but also just kind of the lack of cybersecurity talent that's available to deal with that. So you start talking about managed services. But yeah, circling back to what you're talking about, just the vast amount of data that's being breached in each and every one of these cases that you see on the news. It's staggering. So going back to the pie chart, I feel like at 7%, as disconcerting as that is, it's on the rise.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is I don't like it being at 7, and it's probably going to go higher. So, that's all. That's where protecting your data comes in, right? And having good backups and having good disaster recovery plan in place. And then 3% is actually natural disasters, earthquakes and storms and flooding and all of that. So it's just an interesting thought to look through that and think, wow, that's what's going on there. So the reality of disaster recovery is way more real than what we think it is. So let's go to the next slide here, and we'll talk about on AWS. I know, I believe the way that AWS works is that you can actually do disaster recovery within their cloud, and they have multiple data centers we see here across the globe, and you can actually, I believe, by buying extra storage is how that model works. And then you can work with them on where you want your data to actually reside. So another thing too, excuse me, is backing up your data for if you're not going to go on AWS, then you can actually back it up on-prem. You can have a managed service provider work with you to figure out how to put it somewhere you want it. Even at Fpweb.net, we do disaster recovery backups for customers that are on-prem, they're hybrid clouds, or they're hosted somewhere, or they're hosted with us. Yep. We can actually do all of that. So that's a big thing that we do, and as you see here, all of these things are things that you need to get backed up from all the way back to if you're still running on SharePoint 2007, or if you're running the latest and greatest SharePoint 2016, just to know that you can actually have some options on where you want that data to go. MSP is going to work with you on that and figure out a way to best suit your needs and what you need to do to protect that data.
Okay.
And this is an interesting, excuse me, sorry. This is an interesting slide here. We talk about retain the sensitive data for longer to protect against ransomware threats. And we talked about malware and we talked about viruses and whatnot, but ransomware is unfortunately on the rise and is something that's a very real issue. And if you're holding onto your data for shorter amounts of time, meaning your retention cycles are running 7 days or even 10 days or 14 days, one of the things you need to be thinking about is that malware, ransomware in particular, actually is designed to embed itself on your computer and then lie dormant for, on an average, 14 days. So it'll actually land on your computer. You won't know it's there. It'll sit for 2 weeks under the guise of believing, and the bad guys, they believe that you're only running your data retention for 14 days. So on day 15, they activate the ransomware. So you got to start rethinking, how long am I holding on to my data? How long am I holding on to disaster recovery data? And where our new standard that we're going towards is to move people towards that 30-day or plus retention. So these are things that you need to be considering when you're dealing with these backups and these restores and stuff. Is all the cyber threats that are out there, and what what you need to do to adjust and evolve in this ever-changing climate that we're in. So.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. That way, when you do, if you do decide to restore back to a certain point prior to the disaster, you're going back far enough.
That you can actually be before.
Yeah.
And then you're going to want to get some forensics involved, right? Some cybersecurity involved to actually look at the hard drive, see what's going on, and see if you can clean it or get it, or if you're pre-embedding, So
yeah, okay. I think that that we can honestly say that if you want to find out more about SharePoint managed by Fpweb.net,
yes,
that's on AWS. You can see on the website here, fpweb.net/manage-AWS. You can also give us a call at 866-780, and I lost my slide there.
It's 866-780-4678.
Thanks, Joe.
No problem.
Or you can reach out to us at email, sales@fpweb.net. And those are the best ways to contact us and to find out more. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on was about the ability to get both of the best of both worlds. So you can get pretty much any kind of SharePoint on AWS, and you can get 24/7 support for SharePoint, whether that's on premises or in any cloud, from Fpweb.net. But what's really cool is that we've partnered with AWS to bring you the ease and the instantaneous spin-up SharePoint 2016 Enterprise. That's the newest and greatest version of SharePoint on AWS, and it includes the 24/7 support from Fpweb.net. So it's on one unified bill from AWS. And there's 5 plans available, and once again, the details of those 5 different plans are at fpweb.net/manage-AWS, and it's basically with and without licensing for 150 users, with and without licensing for 50 users, and with licensing for 15 users. And that all includes 24/7 support from Fpweb.net, one unified bill.
That's good.
So I won't put up any more slides, but let's see what kind of questions we have here. And Joe, I'll call these. See if I can expand this screen a little bit for you. Okay, there's one that well, okay, that one right there says, how much does all this cost? And that's a great point. There's several different ways to do this. When you talk about, so I'll answer this kind of 2 ways. One is you can get any kind of SharePoint on AWS, and you can get 24/7 support from Fpweb for SharePoint that's hosted on premises or in any cloud. And that support from Fpweb.net comes in 4 levels. We name them after the roles that they support: admin, database, development, and security. Okay. Admin costs $3,495 a month. So it's a set monthly budget-friendly fee. And it includes a lot of the stuff that Joe was talking about when we were talking about SharePoint admin. But if you compare the cost of an average U.S. salary, according to salary.com, for a SharePoint admin, this admin role of Fpweb.net Absolute Support is 44% cheaper. Now you look at the database plan, and that includes everything in a DBA role plus everything in the admin plan for a combined savings of 63%. So $4,995 a month is 63% less than what you would pay the average salary of those 2 positions. Then you look at the development role, and it's $7,495 a month. It includes everything in the database plan and the admin plan. for a combined savings of 66% compared to the full-time employee salaries of a software developer, a DBA, and a systems admin. The fourth and final role is the security role. It's $9,995 a month. It includes everything in the development plan, everything in the database plan, and everything in the admin plan, for a combined savings of 68%. That's even before we talk about benefits, trying to onboard people, trying to replace people that leave. You get a whole team 24/7. And that takes, and that assists, that supports your SharePoint admin, your SQL DBA, your SharePoint developer, and a SharePoint security. Now the other half of that is when you put the SharePoint 2016 Enterprise on AWS and combine it with the 24/7 support from Fpweb. Those 5 plans I was talking about, 150 users with and without licensing, 50 users with and without licensing, and 15 users with licensing. So that costs $610 a month for the AWS infrastructure, plus a support fee that depends on the number of users, licensing, and whether or not you want that at a monthly, hourly, or annual rate. All those details are available Fpweb.net/managed-AWS. Now I've droned on enough about that one. If you look at this next question, though, I think that's a great point. It says, does this include a migration to SharePoint 2016?
Well, actually, by coming on with us and knowing that we've cornered the market with the expert level of migrations and stuff that we've done over the years, yes, the actual migrations are covered with the 24/7 support with Fpweb.net. We've handled over thousands of customer migrations seamlessly, and we've done multi-generational, where we've gone from 2007 to all the way to 2013. We've done on-premise migrations. We've done our own, obviously within our own cloud, so in other clouds too. So that migration is something that we can actually take care of for you. So if you're considering moving to 2016 and considering the move to the cloud, and having us as Fpweb.net as your SharePoint experts, that free migration is a pretty tempting offer, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm sitting here considering moving to the cloud and considering migrating, this is a pretty good way to, 2 birds, 1 stone situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It does look like we're coming to the bottom of the hour here. I know we do have some more questions that are in the queue. Bill, we'll address those.
Yeah, we'll definitely, the ones that we couldn't get to, we will take on one at a time offline and get those answers to you. And that reminds me, I will also be sending out an email to everyone who's with us today that has a link to a recording of this webinar, as well as a link to register for our next one, which is Manage SharePoint on Azure, and that'll be 1:00 p.m. Central Time on October 25th.
All right, that sounds like a fun one.
Yeah, it should be interesting as well. Joe, you want to do that one for us?
You know what? I'll be back.
Yes. All right.
That'll work. Now, I think some people know about a $50 gift card.
That's right. Let's do it.
Is that right?
I'll let you do the honors of picking our winner.
Looks like Fabio Rosner is our winner. So congratulations, Fabio.
Congratulations, Fabio. $50 Amazon gift card coming to you. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for today's FP webinar, Manage SharePoint on AWS. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.